Forbes Books presents The Great Digital Transformation with Gerard Zatvani, highlighting the pioneers that reimagined possibilities and reimagined businesses. Hola, I'm Joe Pardavila. We're kicking off the podcast with a roundtable discussion focused on digitization versus digital transformation. Gerry and I will be joined by OSF Executive Managing Director Bernadine Wu and Rob Smith, the AVP of Go-to-Market at OSF. This episode was recorded while Gerry and his team were gathered in Porto, Portugal.
Hey Joe, we are having an event here with I'm doing with my company. It's called Days of Excellence. We are bringing people together. It's a really great collaboration, and we are also having a little bit of fun on the side. So it's all good.
Awesome. All right. So speaking of that team, you have a couple of members with you over there. We have Bernadine Wu. Hey, Bernadine.
Hey, nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Nice to hear you. And tell me about your role at OSF, Bernadine.
So I run digital strategy consulting at OSF, which means that we work with our clients around business strategy, and it's usually around growth, acceleration, and digital transformation.
Excellent. And then the third member of the party over there is Rob Smith. Hey, Rob.
Hey, how we doing?
So, Rob, what's your role there besides looking like an MI6 agent who's implanted in the company?
Well, you've blown my cover there, Joe, so thanks very much. I look after a lot of our UK and Ireland clients, and primarily in global terms, I help connect what our customers want when they start talking to us to a real life solution that really meets their needs.
Excellent. And Gerry, we're going to be talking about digitization versus digital transformation. Now, for you guys, that's an easy thing to decipher. For me, not so much. So before we get into the verses, let's break them down. Digitization and digital transformation. Who wants to take that?
Yeah, so I would say it's not even easy to pronounce digitization.
No,
it
not.
Doesn't roll properly in your mouth, but
no,
it really just reflects the entire concept of putting what you have in a digital environment. You're digitizing something. From my point of view, if you are having a paper-based process, let's bring this box to that place, and you have it described or written on a paper, and that you want to put it on an Excel file, for example, where you capture those steps. That's digitization.
Okay.
If you want to change that process and you say, okay, we're not going to put this box there, but we're going to take it outside first and then bring it back in, you're changing the process. That's digital transformation. So that's basically how I'm thinking about it. And our conversation today is going to be talking a little bit about examples and how do we see those things, and discussing really about it a little bit.
Great. And so, Bernadine, how do you see the way OSF is handling digital transformation?
You know, we work with a lot of retailers and brands, and of course, digital has been, the holy grail and the popular thing to do. And of course, during COVID, everyone, including grandma and grandpa, started, shopping online. And so the world is changing already. But I think what Gerry's talking about is being intentional and strategic about making this digital transformation a major step function forward, something that companies need to invest in and be very planful about. And it's not just the tweaking, it's not just upgrading. All those things are important, of course. But how do you get your entire enterprise, your entire, management team from the top to the bottom, all of your systems, all of your processes to take that leap and jump ahead, leapfrog, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 steps ahead. Everyone is moving towards digitalization and, of course, use of more technology. But instead of, sort of organic, one by one step at a time, it's how do we leapfrog ahead?
And for Rob, talk to me about that switch, because it doesn't sound like it's as easy as a light switch.
No, it isn't really. I think the thing people need to think about now is that there's a lot of common use cases. So if we look into retail, we can see that people took that first step of digitization. They made a website. The website could sell things, but it was completely separate to their stores. It was completely separate to anything else to do with their organization. Retail has gone full into digital transformation now. You have the click and collect, you're using the store network, you're really using digital to power the experience. That's transformation. But then, as Bernadine is saying, so many things are now losing their offline part So let's take an internal example of something like recruitment for a company. It used to be so dependent on in-person interactions and interviews and all those kind of different things. During COVID, this goes out the window. So you can't really digitize that. You need to go straight to digital transformation. And that's the most important thing now, I think. People need to skip digitization, right? Entirely. Because otherwise you're just making a small step change.
And speaking of transformation, Gerry, let's step back a little bit and talk about the transformation that OSF Digital has transformed in the last 10 years. You've even said OSF is much different than what you did 10 years ago. So take us back 10 years ago and where you are today.
Wow, you're going really far in time.
Yeah, man.
I'm not even sure if I can remember 10 years ago, but no, seriously speaking, I've been dreaming about this new way of working since quite some time, and we've been an innovator from this point of view. I never really seen the point, like Rob mentioning in the recruiting, to actually do it person to person and everything. Not everything has to be like, even the tools. Like, this is one of the ways to do digital transformation. Imagine this recruiting process, and back in those times, you had Skype, you had Skype with video, with audio, whatever. And this tool enabled you to actually rethink a little bit the interview process. So what we did, okay, we do it in a different way. The old way doesn't work anymore. Technology gives you a new possibility. Let's try that out. Let's change the process a little bit. Let's change that and reimagine things. And since then, I mean, with us, everything has been reimagined, and we have a process, what it's called organizational innovation. And that organizational innovation, it's all about, okay, can we reimagine this process? Can we rethink this process? So 10 years ago, when we started this entire process of changing the company, the organization into a global scalability machine, delivery machine, bringing people together all in ways that, we are a global company. We cannot work with each other on site all day long, because one is in New York, the other one is in Sydney, or you have somebody in Tokyo, somebody in Bucharest. It's impossible to work in the same way. However, working together is important. And what we have been seeing with companies beforehand, companies would still try to be global, but somehow siloed on countries and on teams, and they would not collaborate. There was no interaction for real. And we wanted to change that. So in this entire process, we really put together a new way of doing business, like really envisioning the next company, the next way of putting an enterprise together, a global enterprise together, an enterprise that scales, an enterprise that goes places. So it's not just about what we are doing for the customers, but also what we are doing to ourselves, the way we transform ourselves, the way we think about ourselves. That has been a huge journey.
So, Bernadine, help me unpack that a little bit, though, in terms of silos, because I feel like these silos happen unintentionally. I think people are assigned jobs and tasks, and then they just do it. But what your team is doing is you are intentionally unsiloing these situations. I don't even know if that's a word, but talk to me about how you are able to do that to prevent silos from happening.
Well, I'm going to take a slightly different tack, which is that we are all people. Company is made up of people. The world is made up of people. Our shoppers are people. And so our customers, which are always at the center of our business and our intentions, are there to serve consumers. Now, we're also all consumers, and we're moving ahead, right? We use different tools. We use different ways of connecting with each other. We have different things of importance in our lives. Certainly COVID has taught us a lot about that. Our kids are using different tools. Literally, the cycle is every couple of months it's something different. And so as we think about how do we serve people, whether they're employees or, as Gerry said, our team all over the world, or consumers who are operating and shopping and behaving in different ways, we have to follow where they are, and we also have to leap ahead to lead them to the next way of shopping and entertaining and so on. And even shopping in itself these days is not about shopping. It's about entertainment. It's about community. It's about being together. So you talk about, how someone shops, they share, just like we collaborate across the world, the consumer, she goes into the dressing room and she tries on clothes and she shares it with her friends right there while she's in the dressing room, right? And that's what we need to enable so that she has that easy experience.
Yeah, this is exactly to the point when I'm thinking about transformation, like in our day-to-day life as people, we are trying out tools like you have a WhatsApp, you have a text message, you are from the dressing room, you are communicating with someone, Snapchatting and sending
a TikTok video while you're in there.
Yeah, the technology actually is being tried by people, is being used by people to try out new ways of doing things. So then why wouldn't an enterprise reimagine the way they do business by using the same patterns done in a different way, maybe, but really the same possibility that these things are enabling you with. So that's about, the transformational part of digital transformation. I'm hearing a lot of companies that are talking about digital transformation, and when you go a little bit deeper, they say, well, we are just upgrading our systems. We are bringing a system that we used 20 years ago to be current, to be. Yeah, but did you try to reimagine a little bit your process? Did you try to bring maybe something new in, or how are you thinking about it? I mean, that's digitization, which is good in itself. It's not, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's not really digital transformation. Today, if you are setting up a website to sell something online, that's not digital transformation. It was 20 years ago. Today, it's no longer digital transformation. That's basic stuff. That's just ABC. If you want to do digital transformation, you really have to rethink your way. You really have to rethink processes. You have to bring something new. You have to bring new ways of business processes.
Interesting. And Rob, talk to me about, you handle the UK. And as Americans, well, we're all about America. We don't know about anything that's going on in the rest of the world. But does digital transformation transcend borders? Is a digital transformation in the UK similar to what would happen in North America or South America or even Africa? Can you break that down for me a little bit?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I think there's a reasonably famous phrase. I can't remember the attribution, but the future is here. It's just not evenly distributed, right? So you can go to different countries and you can see parts of the future that will come to other countries, maybe at a different pace, but it all depends on that country's context. So in the UK, we in general are seen as slightly ahead in e-commerce transformation for whatever reason, because we kind of got going with it a little bit quicker, I think, overall than maybe Europe or the US. But if you then look to countries such as Africa or areas like that, then mobile technology is absolutely paramount. The idea of kind of a powerful Apple laptop that a lot of people grew up with before phones were so smart, that just doesn't make any sense to them, right? They've always been transacting off their phone, using the mobile networks for data. The whole concept of broadband into a house, it's irrelevant. And then if you go over to Asia, China, Thailand, Korea, then obviously their smartphone evolution is huge. And we're seeing some very interesting trends coming from there around kind of social shopping that we were talking about, or video shopping, where people are kind of showing things, people are getting reactions, buying it on the spot, that kind of interaction, entertainment that Bernadine was talking about. That is one of the primary ways of shopping over there. But that's not really so much in the UK, right? So I think all of these things will start to melt together, and each country, each area, depending on its context, will take the best of what they like, and you'll see that trend.
It's funny because here we always talk about how we're all obsessed with our phones, but from what I understand, internationally, not that it's bad or worse, they're worse in terms of mobile phone use. They basically live on their phones in many parts of the world. Isn't that correct, Rob?
Yeah, it is. Well, I suppose it depends. You look at the more you go down the generations, the more there is an attachment, I think. But at the same time, why do they use their phones? It's because the utility that they have on that phone, the digital transformation that's happened, is so much more useful. So they use it a lot more because there's so much more utility to it. They can do anything with their phone. The payment networks around phones in China are immense. It's so deeply embedded in the ecosystem that why wouldn't they use anything else, basically? Right. The phone is the most utility. We still have it in certain parts of the world where we're like, oh, I'm going to use my laptop for that. Yeah. Because the phone experience kind of sucks, right? It'll get there. We'll move quite rapidly.
And Gerry, talk to me about working with B2B and B2C. How does OSF deal with those verticals?
Well, we have a lot of expertise in both B2C and B2B, and we are trying not to really put borders between these two things, because you are seeing is that people want to bring their personal experience from their day-to-day life in their company, into their company. So if you are used to do things in a certain way on your phone or at home, you want the same ease of doing things when you are ordering something from a distributor, which is a typical use case with a distributor. You're ordering from your distributor and your distributor is saying, well, send me a fax. And you say, what? What is a fax? You know, that's the same kind of an experience somebody in a B2B environment expects. And we are trying not to kind of break them up, not to separate them. We are thinking about them in the same way. And when we are setting it up, and especially thinking about like being a customer-centric way of approaching things and making sure that you have the same ease of doing things in a B2B setup, in a B2B use case, the same as you do when, you know, you're paying something when you are at home, regardless if it's on your desktop or on your mobile phone or whatever is your way of paying things and interacting with things. So that's the philosophy.
It's a perfect example of digitization versus digital transformation. If you're a B2B company that's about to embark on a digital program, you've got to skip digitization, because otherwise you just end up missing the customer experience, right? Bernadine said we're all people. We absolutely are. If you just try and digitize what you do, you'll end up frustrating your end customers, because what you do is you take away the human interaction that they used to have with salespeople or whatever. You take away that bit. That's actually quite enjoyable for quite a lot of people. And you just make it into some kind of faceless form, right?
Just an order taking system.
An order taking system.
Yeah.
All you've done is added utility your side. The only thing that you've done slightly better is maybe that form is 24/7 available instead of before you had to pick up the phone, whatever.
And they send you a fax.
They always send you a fax. So this hasn't changed the game. Most people won't actually find a lot of results out of that process, and they'll get frustrated. So we need to skip that, bring a customer experience that is consumer-like, and all of a sudden the results will come a lot faster.
The thinking also is transforming to where it's not just, no, this is my sales guy. I'm in a community with this salesperson, this brand that I buy from. And why do I buy it? Because my consumers need it. It becomes a lot more connected and a lot more interdependent now, so that it is, these are enablers. And I think, what I love about what OSF and Gerry are doing is we are enablers of transformation, whether that is at the people process level, the technology level, the ugly stuff and the good stuff and fun stuff too, right?
Challenging our customers. That's it's not always something that is easy to do, but I think it's a requirement to challenge. Okay, but why do you do this like this? Like it's can we maybe rethink this a little bit? Maybe bring something new, maybe do it in a different way, a little bit more, let's rethink the way you approach it. And it's not easy to challenge this thing, the way of doing things. I'm doing it like this because this is how I did it 20 years ago and it worked. Okay, I get it. It works today, but you're not building it for today. You're building it for the next 10 years. Maybe we should take the time to rethink it a little bit.
A good example of that, for instance, with one of my customers was around retail stocks. So they wanted to give a kind of a real-time view of inventory that was in the store, but they had some old systems that just weren't able to provide that picture. There was a delay in the way the information was being sent. And that was because of an old system. They saw that as a immovable object, right? A stone that nothing could happen. So we challenged that a little bit and we found a way around it. We found a way to interrogate the store stock directly at the source, and therefore we had a real-time view and we could move it on a little bit. There is just some assumptions in people's minds that just a quick question and you can actually get around it.
Bernie, I want to dive into the line that Gerry said. It was challenge your customers. I think a lot of customers sometimes don't want to be challenged. They want to just pay for something. Hey, I'm paying you to do this. Don't make me do any extra work. How do you walk that fine line of improving them, but also pushing back their previous thoughts?
We're in the business of challenging their thinking for the sake of growth or acceleration or transformation. And so the kind of conversations we have are usually around what is the vision that you're trying to get to first, right? Beginning with the end in mind. And usually, yes, it might have a sales amount, or it might have a a stock price, or it might have a numeric value to it, and that is measurable. But it usually comes back to, now, how are you going to get there, and how are we going to transform our relationship with our customers? At this stage in our industry, the ones that will die are the ones that don't change enough, that don't transform enough. We just saw hundreds of retailers close stores, close their businesses over the last 3 years, right? Well, then the next phase is also going to happen. It's it's sort of like thrive or die kind of a scenario. So I do think that the conversation needs to be around, how are you thinking ahead and transforming the way that you think about serving this customer that is already moving ahead, that is already trying different things. How can you experiment and fail? We work with a lot of customers on their P&L, their budgeting, and we often tell them, put 5% towards failure. Because if you're not failing, then you're not trying hard enough, right? Or you're not trying enough different things. That's a tough pill to swallow for somebody who's managing a P&L.
I think one of the things we always say, and it's kind of an obvious thing to state maybe, but that we want to be a digital transformation partner, and it's the partner bit of that that's most important. If we have customers that aren't in a partnership with us, then they will not accept challenge very well, because it's a client-supplier relationship. You do that because I said you do that. We're not interested in that, really. We want to build partnerships with our customers so that those customers can work with us, because we have a lot of expertise, especially in the consultancy and strategy side of things, and that we can really help them. And they prefer that, our best partnerships, because they know they don't have all the answers. What they have is their industry knowledge. What we have is digital transformation knowledge. Those two things together make a good digital transformation.
We have a client who said, let's talk about if we changed our business to where 50%, this is a large brand manufacturer, global, if 50% of our business was direct with the customer. Just a pretty bold statement when 80% of their business is through retailers and big box and boutique stores. That's a moonshot kind of a statement. But how did we get to the moon? You have to make these moonshot statements and go through the exercise. And it might just be an exercise, and it might just be 10 or 20% from that exercise that becomes, a part of a plan or part of operations. But if you don't think about those moonshots, then you're not thinking big enough or bold enough.
Wow. And in that case, I mean, that's not even just a digital transformation. That's almost like a physical transformation. You're changing the mindset of the company. So how does mindset and technology then sort of work hand in hand there?
Joe, I read an article these days that was a little bit ironic, that saying that the brick and mortar will save online. It is also, in many cases, it is not really about moving completely online, or brick and mortar will die, or we want to become fully digital, direct to consumer or not, or whatever. First and foremost, having a vision about where your business will go. And having this direct to consumer aspect in your business, this driving, also having a side of the business that is direct to consumer, I think it's important in today's world, because especially for manufacturer, what's happening is that they do not have a real connection with their customers. They manufacture some stuff, they send it out through their sales channels, to their distribution channels, and that's it. And then that thing gets sold, and then what's the connection? How am I getting any kind of input? How am I knowing if I need to change something? In most cases, there is a very weak connection between the manufacturers and their consumers, and having a direct to consumer link, a direct to consumer channel, really enables you to transform your business. Now, that would be a moonshot statement to go to 50% or 80% or whatever in your direct to consumer, but that's really the expression of where do I want to be and how do I want to transform my business moving forward. And I think that's really the first thought that needs to be looked at if you want to see how bold they are, because their boldness comes from that, from their vision of how they imagine their business, how they want to interact with their consumers, to their customers 5 years from now, 10 years from now. That's where it really starts.
You make a really good point though, Joe, about change and managing change, because we often say that actually the technological part is relatively straightforward, right?
Mhm.
We understand the products and services that we're putting in. We understand the data they've got and what they've got at the moment. But the hardest part of it will be the change management within that business, bring again the buy-in of all the kind of people. So in the B2B, the manufacturing example, it's those sales teams that have to completely change who they are, from order takers to actual leaders of the customers, helping them select the right products, being curators of what they need. This is a massive change for a lot of people. That consultancy that we can offer around change management is just as important for these big programs as it is the technological piece. But I think a lot of people think change needs to take a long time and we need to manage that change. And the one thing that COVID has definitely shown us is that if change is forced upon you, it doesn't take anywhere near as long as you think.
Awesome. Well, you stole my thunder there, Rob. I was just going to go there. So,
Sorry.
people resist change, consumer habits change, but then all of a sudden a global event like a pandemic happens. So, Gerry, take us back to 2020 and what kind of work OSF had to kind of either scramble or was prepared to do for these companies at the height of what, we were all going through at the time.
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic started and we started receiving calls. Hey, we want to start selling online in 2 weeks. Can you help me with that? Said, okay, fine, let's do it. Let's find a way. Let's make it happen. We put a number of enterprises, companies online in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Also had many challenges in terms of the way they would operate warehouses because people were not allowed to go there. So they would, in some situation, needed to have very weird ways of having people go in and do some pick and packing in a socially distanced way and send it out and everything. And we needed to provide the support, the technological support to make that happen. So those were in the initial days, those were the realities that they were facing. Like we had customers that went from selling a few items a day to millions of dollars a week, like that. And we had to provide that support so that they can actually survive. Basically survives really. It's and once that the first wave went through, then we had to sit down and say, okay, well, let's what is the continuity? Where do we go from here? And how do we really rethink these ways of doing things? But for me and generally for us, it wasn't really that new of a thing because we were kind of imagining this future already.
Wait a minute, you knew a pandemic was coming?
Well, if you are reading
you should have told us, Gerry. Why didn't you tell us?
If you are reading the books
and watching the movies,
any epidemiologist will tell you that the chance of having a pandemic is pretty high and that we should have been preparing for it. So it's just a matter of when that will happen. It's not an if it will happen. So, and in the way we were set up and the way we were thinking about this new world and using the technologies and working remote and being able to interact in different ways, maybe some virtual ways in some cases, really enabled us to actually just pick up the ball and run with it. It's so that's what happened when the pandemic hit us.
So who's going to win the World Cup, Gerry?
He's only going to tell us so we can place some bets.
Yeah. Oh, all right, of course, yes.
You got to be on the inside here. At OSF, we run something called the Omnichannel Retail Index. And this is a study that has been going on for 7 years. And we study the top brands and retailers and who's doing what and what sort of capabilities they have. Before COVID, the curbside pickup capability for brands and retailers, there was only about 5 or 6% that were doing that. Within 3 months, there was 76%.
Wow.
Of this study that suddenly figured out curbside pickup, which was on their roadmap, but 3 years from now. Yeah. And so, this transformation sometimes is forced upon us, and being there, of course, is like, that's our business, is to be there to enable that. And it had to happen. And that's just going to keep happening and keep happening. And that window or that turnaround time to invent, to implement, to do things is just going to get shorter and shorter and faster and faster.
The clear lesson of COVID, though, is that if that can happen because it's forced upon us by a global event, inspirational and good leaders can do that within their organizations without a push, right? Without a global event behind it. They can take advantage of the fact that, oh, change can happen that quickly. It might be a little bit messy. It might not be perfect. And customers might get slightly annoyed at times, but they'll be thankful later when you get there so much faster and you add utility to their lives for years to come, right? Instead of missing out on 2 to 3 years.
But even in terms of the government, look at all the digitization and digital transformation they've implemented in a matter of months, and how far we've gone in some ways that like you would not be able to imagine that. And the healthcare system, is like mind-blowing. Like what like taking an online appointment with your doctor, that was like before it was unheard of. And I was super frustrated by this experience. Like, why wouldn't you do that? Why do I need to go to your office in actually just to be able to talk to you? I'm not even doing anything, like it's and nowadays with all the sensors and everything, right, my personal doctor should be connected to all the systems that I'm having, the wearables that I'm having attached to me, to measure all of the metrics and the data and everything. That's the future. But guess what? We are still not doing it. We are not there. We are not. Why? Can we just go there? Because it's so obvious.
And that wraps up the first part of our roundtable discussion with OSF Executive Managing Director Bernadine Wu and Rob Smith, the AVP of Go-to-Market at OSF. Coming up in the second part of our talk, Gerry weighs in on companies that will be blocked from capturing data from unsuspecting customers.
If you developed your entire business based on one thing only and capturing data from consumers without asking them, well, maybe you deserve to die. I mean, what? Yeah. I don't know. Hey, your business maybe is not that good. That's not solid.
This has been The Great Digital Transformation with Gerard Zatvani. To participate in the conversation, go to gerardzatvani.com. The Great Digital Transformation is a production of Forbes Books.